Yeah, hey everybody. So today we're going to take a really quick look at a good resource that I found on Reddit, of all places, for those of you who are doing the online agency style marketing plan that I've put out in the different courses that some of you are taking, the free course specifically on the coach platform that many of you are reading this on now. But this is not mine. I mean, this is just something I found a couple of days ago that highlights something very similar to what I'm suggesting you guys do in terms of growing an online agency. This works locally or for a niche. You know, it could be an international niche that you're targeting, or more preferably to me, a local market. I think this guy is actually referencing local, business owners here. But it's a really interesting, deeper dive into the mechanics, the nuts and bolts of reaching out, as especially if you're in the web design style niche. So if you're offering those services. Now, this guy, Skywalker 622, whoever that is, he says some things in this example that get some pushback, in terms of the comments. And I think some valid pushback. Some of the things that he says strike me as exaggerations. I think they're a little bit hyperbolic in terms of some of the numbers that he's putting out. Specifically, he says he gets 75% of the emails that he sends out, he closes, which is just a ridiculous number. And there's nothing, based upon the, the communication, creativity, or fluency of his email that seems to warrant that kind of claim. But what he is doing is really, or what he claims to be doing, is pretty logical to me, and in my own experience, a very valid way of growing a profitable business using something not so dissimilar to what I recommend to you. So I would recommend that you read this thread, and there's two other little caveats I'm going to point out. One is he has a great idea that I never even thought of, that maybe some of you have thought of, but a wrinkle that I didn't consider. And two, he's not in any way talking about using an authority site or a directory, which will, for those of you who are following me, that's a big part of my process. Is you build something that has value empirically in a niche, in a marketplace, in a local environment, and you use that to enhance your appearance of expertise and experience and authority, and use that perceived expertise to, really brand yourself as the go-to person that folks in that niche or in that locality want to turn to for web-related services of any kind. It just makes sense if you think about it. If you own a directory in a given city and you have 100 restaurants that are listed, whether they've signed up on their own or whether you seeded those restaurants yourself, and you are a web design agency targeting restaurants in your city, well, clearly, if you send an email to a restaurant, the 101st restaurant, inviting them to use your services and take part in your directory, they're going to be much more likely to look at that directory and see 100 other restaurants and be, wow, I mean, this guy is clearly a player. And they're going to be much more attuned to listening to whatever you have to offer. Plus, of course, they're going to want to be listed on your site. So that's, in a nutshell, the directory piece. But this guy's not making any allusions to using any of the directory or authority site model. But what he is doing, and one of the things that really struck me as uniquely smart, was he's actually sending, he creates a, or he says he creates a, restaurant A um, mock-up. So he actually will buy a template, let's say, off of Theme Forest for a restaurant, and he will, on a subdomain of his main development site, proactively create a site for a target client. So let's say that client is ABC Sushi. So he will actually go onto this development install that he has, and he will create a subdomain for ABC Sushi, and he'll take a template and just customize it for 30 minutes. And so it matches the branding for ABC Sushi. And you'll see that he uses a lot of the same ideas that I suggest, like here, like in my letters that I've shared with many of you, so that you can copy and use in your own campaign. So he'll say, he's finding shitty websites, like people who have bad websites, and he's basically telling, this is what you could have. And he's giving them the extra step that he takes that I haven't thought of, which is really smart, is building a specific site for that specific restaurant. So he's actually sending them something that is branded to them. And, that's really appealing, obviously. I mean, if I got an offer or an invite that had, Ian.com already branded to me, and I know my current site is really bad or is outdated or just simply isn't nearly as good as it ought to be, and somebody actually takes the steps to create something for me that I'm looking at and saying, wow, this is really what my website could look like. And this guy already has it set up with my stuff on there. It's just a really, I think, a smooth and sexy way of getting people to say yes. In a, smarter than the stuff that I've suggested, which really is basically just creating a site that would be applicable to all sushi restaurants in a local city, and saying to that same hypothetical Ian, hey, this is what your sushi restaurant could look like, and this could be yours because we've developed this for somebody else who backed out, or it's an example site we use for our directory clients. Whatever the script is that I would use, he's taken it one step further, and I think in a obvious and smart way. So again, I would recommend, for those of you who are looking to really grow something, on two levels: one on the directory or authority side of the street, or authority site side of the street. I'm sorry, it's early, my brain's still not working well. That you definitely look at this post, because you'll see not only what he outlines, and this may or may not be true. This could be just some person just projecting what he wants people to think is true. But there's also a lot of follow-up comments and a lot of people who are sharing their own experience, as I said, including some pushback on some of his numbers, which I would imagine are, my gut tells me, without much of a gut check, that he's exaggerating, by a fair amount. But 75% of people responding favorably to something that you're trying to sell cold is not likely in any market, in any universe that I've ever traveled in. So, but even if you just made that 10%, guess what? You're sending 10 emails a day, and you're getting one person to agree to buy a $500 or $600 or $900 asset from you, even on its face. If it's nothing beyond that, that's good money, and very little time involved in earning that good money. And if you really scale that idea properly, the way that I try to communicate to you, you can add SEO services, email marketing, social media marketing, anything, content marketing, anything you can imagine, you can incorporate into that sort of offer, turning a six or seven or $900 sale into a five or six or $7,000 sale over the course of 12 months. So really check this out. Again, I found this a really helpful resource, and I hope that you do too. All right, thanks so much. If you have any questions, post them below.